In the 2015 offseason, the Portland Trail Blazers lost 4 of their 5 starters. Robin Lopez signed with the Knicks, Nick Batum was sent to the Hornets in a 3-team trade, Wesley Matthews left for Dallas, and their all-star big man LaMarcus Aldridge went to the Spurs. The only starter remaining from that 2014-15 Blazers team was Damian Lillard. Going into the 2015-16 season, the Trailblazers were expected to be one of the worst teams in the league after losing so much depth. But with the sudden emergence of cjmccollum, Dame and CJ formed one of the best scoring backcourts in the entire league, and led Portland to a 5th seed in the West. In the playoffs, the Blazers ended up upsetting the Clippers in 6 games, before eventually losing to the Golden State Warriors in the second round. After the Blazers' surprising season, they now had much higher expectations. Despite having one of the best backcourts in the league, the Blazers haven't been able to find much playoff success since that series win over the Clippers. They had a nice run to the Western Conference Finals in 2019, but other than that, they were bounced out in the first round in 2017, 2018, and 2020. These first round exits have led many people to believe that Dame and CJ cannot win in the playoffs together. However, the Blazers have decided to keep their backcourt together and build around them better than they ever have before. Portland traded for Robert Covington and brought in guys like Derrick Jones Jr. and Harry Giles. The main reason that Portland finished with a bad record last year was because they were dealing with injuries. Going into the 2020-21 season, the Blazers are healthy, and this may be the most complete team they have put around Dame and CJ. At the start of this year, I expect Portland's lineup to look like Dame at the 1, CJ at the 2. I think they're going to start Derrick Jones at the 3. They've been doing it a little bit in preseason, experimenting with that. So I think they're going to start with him at the 3. Then Robert Covington at the 4 and Nurkic at the 5. Off the bench, they got Anthony Simons, who I think could have a really, really good season this year. I think he could really take another leap. Gary Trent, who looked great to end the season. He looked great in the bubble, and he really showed out. He kind of came out of nowhere. Then Rodney Hood, he's going to be coming back from a torn ACL, so hopefully he can get some scoring off the bench. They brought back Melo. I think he's going to be better in a bench role. I think now he's kind of, gotten to a point where he's willing to accept that role. Hopefully he's cool with it and everything. If he can play about 20 minutes a game or so, and every now and then he can have a really good scoring game, I think that would be great. And then Harry Giles, who I thought was a really, really underrated pickup. I hope they give him a good amount of minutes as the starting 5 off the bench. And then they also have Zach Collins, but he's injured at the moment. I think he's supposed to come back at some point in January, but I'm not too sure exactly when he's supposed to come back. So I just didn't put him in the rotation because he won't be at the start of the year, but at some point he'll be in the rotation. He'll be getting some minutes. He might even start because last season, before he got injured, he was actually the starting 4 for the Blazers. So we'll see what they do once he comes back. So I wanted to go off script for this one because I've been a fan of Dame since he came into the league, and I've watched a lot of Portland games over the years, especially after they lost all those guys in the 2015 offseason, and Dame was like the main guy there, and he really became the franchise guy in that moment. And since then, they've been a hard team to watch, I'm not gonna lie. And what I mean by that is just it's really become Dame and CJ, and that's pretty much it. That was kind of the main problem with them since that 2015-16 season. They took a lot of people by surprise because obviously CJ kind of emerged out of nowhere, and he came in and he was getting heavy minutes. He was starting and he was averaging 20 points a game. He was a rising star in the league, and when you combine that with Dame, they were a really lethal backcourt, and they took a lot of people by surprise. But I think after that first season, people were able to kind of game plan for them. People started to game plan for CJ more, and although he still was very productive, the team just was, they were predictable because you knew it was just Dame and CJ, and that's the thing. They haven't really had many other perimeter guys that they can really rely on, right? I remember watching them in oh my God, in 2016, 17, and 18, and just watching them play with like, I mean, I love like Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless. Those guys were really good defensive players, but they were just so inconsistent offensively. They couldn't really do anything when you put the ball in their hands. They couldn't really create and do stuff when they had the ball in their hands, and they were inconsistent shooters. Not the best shooters in the world, respectable, but still not the best shooters in the world. And it was just tough because those were the most reliable, I guess, perimeter guys that you had playing alongside Dame and CJ for quite a while. I mean, they brought in Evan Turner, I remember, at one point, and oh my God, that was not fun. That was not fun because he couldn't even shoot at all, and that was just the thing. They had Shabazz Napier for a little bit, but Shabazz Napier isn't... He's all right. Every once in a while, he'd have a nice scoring game. But that was just kind of the theme of this team. They couldn't really bring in guys that really fit around Dame and CJ, and because of that, they just became very top-heavy, at least on the offensive end. And in the playoffs, it was hard to really go up against teams like, I think they faced the Warriors 1 or 2 seasons in the playoffs, and the Warriors are just so dynamic offensively, and if you're gonna outscore them, you have to have a very dynamic offense with tons of different scoring weapons, and the Blazers just didn't have that. But in the 2018-19 season, when they were most successful, that's because they had some other perimeter guys that they could rely on. Obviously, Nurkic wasn't a perimeter player, but he was kind of starting to emerge that year in 2018-19. But the Blazers also had Rodney Hood that year. They had Seth Curry. They had some guys that could help Dame and CJ and take some pressure off of them, and that was really important. The Blazers ended up beating the Thunder pretty easily in the first round. They were also the 3rd seed that year during the regular season. They were the 3rd seed, and they ended up beating the Thunder in in 5 games, I think. And then Dame hit that game winner in game 5, as we know. And then they beat the Nuggets in 7. They kind of got destroyed by the Warriors in the conference finals, but they got there. Right? It was a lot more successful than in previous years when they had just lost in the first round, right? So that just kind of showed I think kind of the blueprint of what this Portland team needed to do, how they needed to build around Dame and CJ. And the management, they went out and they did a good job this offseason. Obviously last year was kind of a mess because of injuries, so I don't think we can really look at that too much as, an indicator of how good this team is. They were injured and everything. But this offseason, like I said, they made some good moves. Robert Covington, I thought, was a really underrated pickup. He's a guy who, he kind of fits the mold of like Aminu and Harkless, what they were for Portland, like versatile defenders and everything, guys who could help Dame and CJ who aren't the best defenders. Robert Covington is a very versatile defender. He's going to help Portland a lot, but I think he's just a more reliable shooter than them. And because of that, he's gonna be better than those guys ever were for Portland. Robert Covington is just like, he's like everyone's favorite role player. Everyone likes him, and I heard a lot of people talk about that move, and a lot of people seem to like it. I did too, so that was a good pickup. Nurkic, he's gonna be back healthy, and he looked really good in the bubble. I think if he can just stay healthy for this season, he's gonna be a big help. They got Derrick Jones Jr. I'm not too sure how to feel about him because I know he hasn't ever really got super consistent minutes in the league. He's super athletic though, and I think he's a pretty good defender. And obviously he can slash to the rim. He's just so athletic. He can score at the rim. He's going to be great in transition. But I want to see him add that jump shot. I think he can be really good attacking off closeouts just because of his explosiveness. But yeah, like I said, I want to see him add, more of a jump shot, become more of a proven commodity on the perimeter, and be able to knock down threes, at least at a respectable rate. So we'll see if he can do that. If he can, that would be a really, really underrated pickup. Then Anthony Simons and Gary Trent off the bench. Oh my gosh, that's going to be an exciting backcourt off the bench. Anthony Simons, I think he's going to take a step this year. Gary Trent looked great in the bubble last year. he's a guy that competes on both ends. He gives good effort on the defensive end, and he can really shoot and score on the offensive end too. Rodney Hood, another scorer. He's going to be back. He might not be his, complete self, but he'll have some nights where he gives Portland some, scoring lift. Carmelo, he's going to have nights where he goes off. And Harry Giles, he could really surprise a lot of people this year. His minutes were kind of inconsistent in Sacramento, but this guy was ranked like number 1 in high school. He was like the number 1 recruit in high school for a period of time, but then he had some injuries. He's looked really good in the preseason though, so I'm excited to see him. The good thing with this Portland team is that they just have a lot of other scoring options outside of Dame and CJ. Like Carmelo can give you nights where he goes off. Rodney Hood was going to give you nights. Gary Trent, Anthony Simons. Even Harry Giles can give you nights where he's just scoring around the rim. Same with Nurkic. Even Covington, he can get hot from 3. So they're just a lot more deadly on offense, a lot deeper. They're going to be a fun team to watch, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on them, to be honest. I mean, the 2017-18 season and the 2018-19 season, Portland finished as, I believe those years they finished as the 3rd seed. So they've shown that when they're healthy, this team can actually finish near the top of the standings in the West, which is very tough to do, but they've proven that they can do it. So yeah, I think that last year was just unfortunate, of course, but this year, if they can stay healthy, I think they're going to be really good again. And with all that being said, I have the Blazers finishing 4th in the West at 45-27. I mean, man, I got the Suns at 3rd and the Blazers at 4th. People are probably going to think that I'm crazy for that, but I mean, these are just my predictions. I think that Portland, they've got a little bit more depth at the moment than some other teams, which is going to help them in the regular season. And there are some other teams in the West that are dealing with some injuries, so I'll talk about them a little bit and where I think they will end up in the standings. But yeah, I got Portland as the 4th seed in the West. Hopefully they can actually do some things in the playoffs, and yeah, hopefully they don't break up this duo of Dame and CJ, because I feel like if they lose in the first round, I don't know, that might happen, so we'll have to see. But yeah, this is where I have them as of now, finishing in the standings.